chances of a softer split, that the House of Lords votes to make amendments to the EU withdrawal bill and then it's taken up later in May by the House of Commons?
Well, I'm not going to do the guessing game here of what's going to happen in the British Parliament, but it is obvious that this Brexit negotiation has proved extremely difficult for both sides, but obviously even more difficult for the British side because there's a lot at stake here. Unfortunately, it's become evident that being part of the EU single market is key, and it was not evident before the vote, and now everybody is trying to find ways to mitigate the loss of having this general access. So discussing about keeping a customs union is a topic that is quite important. It would obviously help for goods to come into Europe from the UK more easily and vice versa. So I think there's a bilateral interest that this would be looked at. I mean, the hard Brexiters said from the beginning they didn't want such a customs union, but Europe has a customs union with countries that are not part of the EU, and it's functioning very well.
It sounds like the EU would be very receptive to having Britain stay in the customs union, but that wasn't the agreement originally, so what would Britain have to give up in order to get that?
Well, obviously everything has a price. If you have a customs union, you have to discuss to have the same rules. Now, for the time being, the United Kingdom has the same rules of origin as the European Union, same rules for environment and hygiene and so on. So you cannot have a cake and eat it. If you want to have the customs union, you cannot have complete independence on your legislation. So it's a give and take. And obviously, if the UK really wants to do it, I would advocate that the European Union and the Commission should take them up on it and work on this. But obviously, it's the UK that has to be making up its mind.
Finance Minister Donald Tusk said today that a solution to the Irish border is needed to ensure that the transition period happens and other deals that have been struck between the two sides. Are you confident that an Irish border solution can be found before or at the EU summit in June?
Well, it's again a guessing game, but I think the reassuring thing in this matter is that we have agreed a transition period with the UK after the exit. The exit will be in March next year, and the transition period goes until the end of 2020. So that buys enough time to go through all these things. The topic we have addressed just before, which is the customs union, is one of the elements that can give a clue here, because you cannot have a border and not have it for other issues. That makes the whole border issue with Northern Ireland really difficult.
Finance Minister, if we could move on, because time is short, to the fear of trade wars and the ongoing spat between the US and various countries. How concerned are you right now that what we're seeing is a deep embodiment of heightened protectionism?
Well, as a Luxembourger coming from a country that's very open to the world, and the same as is the European Union, we advocate against protectionism. The IMF has just released figures of growth for this year, 3.8% worldwide, with the main argument that this is happening because trade internationally is finally picking up. So this is the best answer I can give to this. We have to resist protectionist pressures. They also exist in Europe. There are some who advocate that we should build walls and fences outside the European Union. We say it's exactly the contrary we should do.
Many countries have been trying to grab a portion of the banker exodus from Britain, such as it is. We don't know how many will end up leaving Britain yet, but Luxembourg has been very lucky to get very many. How do you reconcile your position, wanting people to come, obviously, and settle in Luxembourg and bring their salaries with them, with your position in the European Union, where you're not meant to advocate for that?
Well, Luxembourg is maybe in the position where we've always regretted that the United Kingdom is leaving, but we respect the decision of the United Kingdom people. This being said, the whole issue of access to market has also been over-dramatized over time. So there are ways and means how you can circumvent the problem that you're not part of the single market anymore by setting up subsidiaries. That's what quite a few banks, quite a few insurance companies and asset managers based in London have done. Especially those who had no presence on the continent. But that doesn't mean that thousands of people are leaving London. It just means that you have a different setup. You're closer to your customer. That has proved good for Luxembourg because we are quite attractive.
Can you give us any numbers on people or banks or units that have moved or promises of jobs?
Well, in terms of jobs, we're probably talking about over 1,000 maybe, but still a reasonable number. And so what you have to realize is that it is rather small number compared to the people who work in London. So the key here is not people or companies closing in London and opening in Luxembourg or somewhere else in Europe. It's about getting closer to your customer and taking advantage of the EU single market.